As for Vince, since his visit here a year ago, he shut down a football league, enlarged his pro wrestling empire, and suffered a legal takedown at the hands of a noted environmental organization. Now, a bit of a disclaimer here. The topics and circumstances of tonight's interview are at least somewhat different from a year ago. And while we expect this to be plenty interesting, it's not my purpose to try to recreate anything. Still, for the sake of background and for your general amusement, here's a sample from last time. Do you think in some way that this type of programming contributes? Certainly not the biggest part of it, but contributes. You don't even know what I'm going to ask you.
Oh, yeah, I do.
To the incivility and coarseness that's generally out there in the culture now. Does it contribute in some way? Do you pump some of that into the water supply?
Maybe some. You want to let me finish here for a second, pal?
I'm asking you the question.
Then Coach, shut your mouth and let me answer the question, all right? I'll be happy to answer. Let me finish.
They rejected that as a defense.
Would you please let me finish?
Absolutely.
You know, you are? Well, you sure? You're not going to interrupt me. You let me finish.
You've had plenty of time to respond and continue. And here he is, back live. Well, you know, hey, we got the desk here.
Don't embarrass me.
Ordinarily, I wouldn't make us the focus of it, but it's unavoidable. So many people have asked me this question, so I might as well put it to you. How close, if at all, did you come to popping me?
Not very close at all.
How mad were you?
I was, I'm passionate about everything that I do, and it shows. So I was just being passionate. I don't know that I'd really say I was mad. That really wasn't me mad. I can get very, very mad.
Well, you told me that at the time. What happened, really, if you get really, really mad, if you had gotten really, really mad, what would have happened?
I've actually said that it would have been very interesting television if you were the size of, you know.
It would have been a fair fight.
A very large man, then that would have been I was probably that angry. You know, it's one of those things you look back on, you never really know.
Yeah. You see, for the record, I'll just say this. No matter how heated it got, I never had any intention of decking you.
Oh, I should hope not.
Thank you
very much.
I wasn't going to allow that to happen. What kind of reaction, and then we'll move on to the actual topics at hand, what kind of reaction did you get? Because it amazes me. It's more than a year later. I still hear about it. People enjoyed it. They may have thought you got the better of it, I got the better of it, it was a draw, but they found it interesting.
I really got a lot of reaction out of it. You know, I mean, I think people talk on the streets. You know, I mean, that's really, you know, my judge when I walk down the sidewalk and meet our people. You know, and a lot of people were talking about it.
All right, one of the topics we talked about was the XFL. Middle of the season at the time. The ratings had started high and they were plummeting. Right. You said you intended to soldier on with or without NBC, but NBC pulled the plug and then you did too. Yes. Why?
It only made good business sense. You know, it was really. There's a part of me that says it could still be ongoing and it would be a success. There's another part that says, you know, cut your losses, you know, and concentrate on other things and go forward. And that's really what we did. Did
it divert your attention and maybe even lessen your manpower being involved with the XFL to the point where you neglected some aspects of the wrestling?
I was determined once we started it that, you know, to make certain that in no way would I hurt the core product in terms of my time spent. It was really rugged, you know, in terms of the amount of hours spent on both and whatever. So it was getting me down a little bit, I think.
I also asked you at that time whether a colossal failure, you know, we've all stubbed our toes now and then, but a colossal failure, and that's what this turned into, would lessen the buzz around Vince McMahon. You know, when NBC had its 75th anniversary recently and they wanted to poke fun at themselves and pick a half dozen things over the years that really were a flop, the XFL was one. USA Today said it was one of the dozen most embarrassing moments for NBC. What effect, beyond the collapse of the XFL itself, did it have on you personally and on your business enterprise?
Actually, none. Not any ill effect, other than the loss of funds. Because I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to try things. And I'm proud of what we did with the XFL. You know, I wasn't embarrassed. You know, it was a colossal failure, yes, for perhaps a lot of reasons. But I'm really proud of what we did. I'm proud of all those young ball players who got to play ball that otherwise many of them wouldn't.
And a handful are in the NFL.
And a handful played in the Super Bowl. A couple of them played in the Super Bowl this year. So, I mean, it was good football in the end. It was really good football. So I enjoyed it. You know, I thought, you know, from a theoretical standpoint, really, I thought it was going to be a tremendous success. You know, I had not counted on the media backlash, you know, going forward. I didn't know that I was that beloved, you know, and of course my pal, you know, likewise.
Ever saw on NBC.
Sure, you know, I mean, I expected that there was going to be, not that the media would necessarily wrap their arms around this because it is new and it's controversial, and at the same time it's bucking the good old boys, the established NFL, and they have really deep roots in the sports world and all the sports writers. So I thought it might be an uphill battle for a while, but I didn't think it was going to be this much of a failure.
How much did you lose?
I don't actually really can't tell you that much.
Tens of millions?
Sure. Right.
Do you think it diminished your reputation as some sort of television and programming genius? The guy with the Midas touch who, by whatever means, can deliver that coveted young male demographic?
Actually, no. If you're talking about the coveted young male demographic, even the ratings, as abysmal as they were, and the young male demographic were much higher than the NBA today. So, I mean, in that demo, we were delivering. I think that, you know, the media, you know, gleefully, you know, every time there was a drop in the ratings, now look where they are. Now look where they're going, so forth. I think it was kind of a pile-on type thing. And, you know, at the same time, our football was getting much better, you know, and it was just, you know, it just wasn't meant to be. So I don't think, to answer your question, I don't think really that it has an adverse effect on me, you know, because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to try things. And I don't mind, you know, when I fail, I mean, if you're going to fail, why not fail in a big way instead of just...
Congratulations.
There
you go. Another part of the problem, I think, was that it was in prime time. Right. Had it been in the normal weekend sports slots, that's one thing. Sure. But these were getting record low primetime ratings and also drawing the attention not just of sports writers, but of the variety types, the Hollywood Reporter types, because it's entertainment programming.
Right. And we had hoped, you know, that eventually we'd be on, you know, Sunday afternoons and whatever, and now arena football's on Sunday afternoon.
Bear with me here while I try to put this in some kind of perspective. perspective. Ratings for the Raw program and the SmackDown program are down. They're down, though, from phenomenally high levels, and they're still very good by any cable standard. But they have fallen off noticeably, and the teenage demographic is off. I've seen the estimates between 20 and 30%. Is it possible that this has crested for you, that it reached a peak and it crested? The way the NBA may have crested with Jordan, it's still popular. It can't get back to that peak.
That's possible. I don't think it's likely. We always reinvent ourselves over and over again, and we have the ability to do that. We're down about 10% in the ratings, and by those standards, that's not down much at all. And the XFL had nothing to do with that. It's simply not giving the audience exactly what they want. We try to keep our fingers on the pulse of the marketplace, listen to our audience, and really give them what we want, give them compelling storylines and great athleticism. Sometimes we're not always there, but we're no different than Hollywood or the record business or anything like that, that has its ups and downs. We're the same. But when you look at, the longevity and where we come from and these valleys that on occasion we reach, at the same time when we come back up, we always come back up higher. So the plateau continues to go higher and higher as we go forward.
We'll get back to what you might have to do to make an adjustment in a minute, but does it irk you at all that, for the moment at least, you've relinquished the top spot on basic cable to the Osbournes on MTV?
No, actually, I think it's pretty cool. If you have to relinquish it, why not to Ozzy and Sharon and the group, And again, that's a bit of a fad thing. And, next year, this time, when you look at us on a 52-week basis, we're still the king of cable.
Pay-per-view revenues, again, I want to put this in perspective. Ross Greenberg of HBO said, we'd take those numbers the way they are right now for our boxing pay-per-view. But again, it's down off the peak. And some of the attendance at live shows, down off the peak. And people will say, wait a second, the big star, probably the star with the biggest upside in the history of modern wrestling, The Rock, is now off to be a movie star. So if his participation in wrestling is significantly reduced, then the trend looks like it's continuing in the wrong direction for Vince. You say what?
Well, I say again, look at our record. I mean, in terms of the creation of Rock, the superstar in world wrestling entertainment. Before Rock, there was Stone Cold Steve Austin, there's the Hulk, there's Bruno Sammartino. You go right on back. So again, it's like when you look at the longevity of these great performers, that have been in and out of our vehicles, it just gets bigger and broader, with every month on a long-term basis.
Hogan comes back, previously the biggest star in modern wrestling. He faces off with The Rock. It was terrific theater for wrestling fans. It scored well, but subsequently, with Hogan as the champion, right? Have I got this right?
Right.
Okay, with Hogan as the champ, the ratings did not respond quite as much. Is Hogan spent as a marquee star?
No. There's Hogan, and it's one of the things we always wanted, from him, in terms of the Babe Ruth character, you being a baseball guy, Babe Ruth character in the world wrestling entertainment. So we were looking for someone like that, and Hogan is the ideal guy. And he will be that. He has a tremendous heart. And the reaction to Hogan's return has been enormous. It's this nostalgia that, from the 80s and everything. I mean, it's been enormous. And it also brings somewhat of an older demographic, that back to, and awareness back to our brand.
Now, that brand officially now is World Wrestling Entertainment. You can no longer call yourself the WWF because of the World Wildlife Fund, correct?
Say that with a smirk now. Don't get me hot.
There they are. They're a London-based organization of some 40 years standing. And look how tame and lovable the panda is, and yet he scored a takedown on Mr. McMahon.
It's just one of those things. It all started some time ago with the World Wildlife Fund for Nature here in America. And when we registered World Wrestling Federation, they objected only on one basis, that we couldn't use the initials WWF in some sort of font that they only wanted to have. So we said, fine, no problem with that. We will never use that.
The style of print.
Right, the style of print, thank you. So we were fine with that. And then along comes the international organization out of London and says, wait a minute, we have a temporary restraining order from Switzerland, their home base, and in which, we've stopped you in Switzerland from using WWF. We're going to stop you everywhere. And at that time, we had other kind of legal problems, personal legal problems and everything that we had to deal with. So
what kind of problems?
That was when I was going head-to-head with the federal government. So here I was fighting for my liberty at the same time these people were coming after me. So we sat down and we basically made a bad deal. The best of a bad deal. And subsequent to that, and limited our use of the initials and that sort of stuff of WWF. From there, recently they really came after us very heavily because of the internet, which no one could foresee, back in the 80s that it was going to be this big, or even foresee it was going to be and no one could foresee how popular our brand was going to be on a global basis either. And I guess it started with, one of these muckety-mucks getting off the plane, and says he's from the WWF, and some government official says, oh, we're the wrestlers,
Right.
So they have no sense of humor. And we're still fighting this out, and we're still appealing.
So you're hoping to reclaim it, but for the moment it's WWE?
It's World Wrestling Entertainment.
You go back long time.
And wait a minute, before we go
ahead.
back, I do want to say that, and this is kind of nice for me to say, to remind you to get the F out.
That's what the slogan now is, and it appears in some of the ads, including one in Sports Illustrated this week. There are T-shirts that say the F out.
Right.
There you have it. As I've said before, and as I said when you were here a year ago, I grew up as a wrestling fan. I always liked the tongue-in-cheek aspect of it, the broad farce of it. And quite honestly, I find a lot of what you do now funny. I think that you're very funny. The theatricality of it is very amusing. Where we break company, at least in terms of taste, is in some of what I think is gratuitously salacious stuff. In your view, have you toned that down or maintained it? over the last year since we last got together?
There's a bit of maintenance. Again, it's subjective as to whether or not we've toned it down or we have. I mean, and I guess maybe it's in the eye of the beholder.
Well, if there's some tweaking to be done, as you said earlier, to get the ratings back up toward where they were, one obvious question is that tweaking in the direction of making it more salacious?
I don't think so. And I think that more compelling storylines, better athleticism, better matches, just all around better entertainment is what everyone wants to see.
Without passing any judgment. Some people like it, some people don't.
Sure.
You know where I stand. Question. Different from a year ago. That stuff may have lost its ability to shock or to stand out. Elements of fear factor in that. And you got Jerry Springer out there, and you can watch people half naked in a hot tub on any of the syndicated dating shows that are on at midnight or whatever. Is there so much of this kind of stuff out there that it's no longer, whether one likes it or is outraged by it or somewhere in between, it's no longer as distinctive to World Wrestling Entertainment?
I don't think it ever really was all that distinctive to World Wrestling Entertainment. Again, there's always, all sorts of fare out there, far beyond anything we've ever done. I think it's how you do it, how it's executed. You can have the greatest storylines in the world, but if they're not executed well, it fails. Likewise, conversely, I really think it's a combination of good stories and good execution, good performances that makes people laugh or makes them cry or invokes some sort of emotion from them. And that's really the business that we're in. We're in the entertainment business. We try to invoke some sort of emotion from you in whatever way we can. On occasion, it's shock. I think we probably reached the limit some time ago, maybe even 20 years ago, in terms of how you can shock from a physicality standpoint. Because we don't go to where other action adventures go. We don't saw somebody in half with a chainsaw. We don't do that. We don't use guns. We don't use knives.
But there are some things. And I wonder if any of these things, which are from the last year, you would, in retrospect, reconsider. There were shots of dog excrement where Stephanie and Triple H's dog misbehaved and got messed up the floor. Then the dog got leashed to the side of a limo, and you hear the dog yelping off camera, where the dog is apparently run over by the limo. Right. And there was a scene at a show in Pittsburgh. Kurt Angle, the former Olympic wrestler, who's now a heel in your organization, was among those saying to the crowd that Mario Lemieux was a whiner and had faked having cancer in order to get sympathy. Any of those things, in retrospect, grate against the sensibilities of a fair-minded person, you think?
I would hope that they do. I would suggest that that they are intended to do some of that, a fair-minded individual, but hopefully it's a fair-minded individual with a sense of humor. I mean, when Kurt is doing things like that, it sounds like, he said that about Mario Lemieux. Yes, he did, but as a matter of fact, I suggested Kurt call Mario prior to the broadcast just to say, just out of a matter of courtcy, by the way, we have a lot of fun here and we pick on everybody. We're equal opportunity offenders. So why not say something
was Lemieux cool with it?
I don't know. I'm sure they're friends, so I'm sure he was. When you say something as outlandish as that, it really, and it's coming from us. Come on, it's fun.
How about when you dropped your pants? Some of these wrestlers had gotten out of line, and in order for them to get back in your good graces, they had to pucker up. We got a view of your rear end, and they had to pucker up and...
Well, that was the Kiss My Ass Club, as I recall.
Precisely.
You want to join the club?
No, I really, just as a matter of journalistic objectivity, I think I should refrain.
Well, that was interesting. It was entertaining to the audience, and it was okay. It was what it was.
No regrets?
No.
Okay.
None.
Is there a line you won't cross, or do you know where that line is, or is it constantly evolving?
Well, I think that line sort of evolves in entertainment. We sort of follow, general entertainment in terms of where that line is. And more specifically, we're listening to our audience again. I'm not too sure where it is, and it moves on you from time to time. So you sort of have to feel your way through.
After the Iranian hostage crisis, late 70s, early 80s, there was a character called the Iron Sheik who incited a lot of anger in the crowd, made them listen to the Iranian national anthem before a match. During or after the Gulf War, Sergeant Slaughter, who'd been a hero, flipped, became a heel, and started expressing pro-Iraqi sentiments. But post 9/11, no themes related to terrorism or anything concerning that tragedy have shown up in programming. Is that a conscious decision?
Of course. Again, with the Sergeant Slaughter stuff back with the Khomeini era, no one really had any idea we were ever going to go to war. It caught us all by surprise. We really got hurt on that one because here we had this major attraction. We were headed into WrestleMania, and we were going to go to an outdoor venue, actually. A really big, we had to scale it down and everything else. So on occasion, life imitates art or vice versa, and you have to adapt.
I'll give you a couple of dueling quotes. This is you. My personal view is that America's greatest entertainment export is the WWF. We are really, in a microcosm, what a lot of people think America is. When you think of the brashness of our characters, the aggressive nature and the sexuality that's in our show, of course, the in-ring content is totally understandable in any language, any culture in the world. Now, this is Sean Assail, writing in the New York Times. He says McMahon likes to pretend that his product is sports entertainment, but it's really more of a violence variety show filled with state-of-the-art gay bashing, gang violence, spousal violence, woman-on-woman violence, sometimes in vats of pudding, and violence against animals.
Whew. Sounds like he has a problem with violence.
Evidently. Your response to that?
Well, my response to someone writing, and I don't know this guy from the Times.
Well, I don't think he's with the Times. I think he wrote an article for the Times, and he's working on a book that will be published in the next few months about you and about the World Wrestling Federation, now World Wrestling Entertainment.
Again, we're not everybody's cup of tea, but we're a lot of people's cup of tea. They really enjoy what we do, and if they didn't, they wouldn't watch.
How would you promote Tyson Lewis?
I don't know that I could promote it any better than it's been promoted because, I believe that Mike, I don't think he's necessarily been advised to do this, but I think that Mike has just given up completely on the media, and they've tortured the guy in terms of his personal life. And
well, some of that is, a large part of that is his own doing. I mean, he did the stuff, right?
Sure, but I think that, I think the media today many times dwells far too much on the personal lives of individuals, and whether it be in sports or in entertainment. We're all public figures.
I would agree with that, but of course, in Tyson's case, a lot of this stuff played itself out in public, which makes it fair game.
No, it does, but again, to dwell on it, and to constantly come back, and I hope that, that HBO and everyone else, Showtime, that's been involved in this upcoming fight, doesn't dwell on that, because, I mean, fight fans want to see one thing. They want to see Mike fight. And quite frankly, I'm going to be there. I'm not going to miss this, because I think Mike's going to come out and break bones on Lennox Lewis, and I don't think it'll be more than 3 rounds. You'll see the old Mike Tyson. He'll destroy Lennox Lewis in less than 3 rounds, and then from there, great big Las Vegas, welcome back Mike.
You were in business with him briefly. He was part of WrestleMania 14. Right. A, would you like to be in business with him again? And B, do you think that this, as some people have said, Oscar De La Hoya said it the other day, he thinks that he's got a serious emotional problem?
I don't know if Mike has a serious emotional problem or not. When we dealt with him, he was great. He was always on time, always did exactly what we asked, and then some. Fun-loving, easy. Mike's not with us. Okay.
So you got the best of them. All right, they're telling me we've got to go. Last question. Yep. What percentage of your audience do you think thinks wrestling's real?
2.5%.
2.5. That's your precise figure.
I'd say 2.5.
You know what? This is a very civil get-together.
It's been nice.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.